Thank you guys. Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming out to this. This is literally the most important thing I think we can be doing. And one of the wonderful things about this is that they provided us with wooden utensils. So what we don't hear the whole lunch is the clinking of metal. So that's cool. My name's Jason, as Laura just said, and first of all, I want to give a huge thank you to all of you guys, to South Sound College, to the Grains Conference. This is one of the reasons why we're all going to be successful, is because we're coming in, we're networking. So I'm going to talk today, I'm kind of the cheerleader, I'm going to talk today about the perspective of what we've done so far and where I think we're going. And I'm going to use the French word terroir quite a bit, but I probably don't say it the way I really should. And so I'm going to define that a little bit for you and talk about some of the opportunities there. I'm also going to take this microphone out so that I don't have to keep leaning into it. Let's talk just a little bit about an opportunity. So here's what I like to do. I always like to talk about the what, the so what, and the now what. So the what is going to be, where are we? What are we doing, or what do we have? The so what is, how does that matter? And then the now what is going to be, what can we do? Where do we take it next? So for the so what, one of the cool things that you've already identified by being here is that we've got amazing stuff happening in this region. We've got great grain, we've got great maltsters, we've got great bakers, we've got great brewers and distillers, and we're putting all of this together right now. The so what is where we're really, the reason that we came here is to figure out how we can create something that is absolutely unique to our region. And then frankly, make some damn money on it, right? That's our goal, is to really do well, build a grain economy, and have this become recognized as the region where people want to buy products from that are made from grain. So, I'm going to ask a little experiment here. So I know one of your hands is full with a fork, but I'm hoping you'll have one to raise. The first question I have for you is about wine. How many of you consider yourselves wine drinkers? And by that I mean if there was beer, spirits, and wine, you would reach for the wine first. Let's see, raise a hand. Okay. How many of you buy wine and bring it home from the grocery store, from the liquor store? Okay. How many of you are aware that wine comes from different regions, is grown with different grapes, and is different every year? Interesting. So basically, even if you weren't a wine drinker, you raised your hand. You understand that wine has terroir, that wine matters where it comes from, and get this, it can be different every year. That's crazy, right? Who would ever think about that in a beer or a whiskey or a bread or any flour, that it would actually be different? This is what we are creating now. We're creating a culture of it's okay to have a variety, it's okay to have location, and differentiate on that, and of course, it's okay to have vintage. I'm showing you things that people spend hours of their life studying to understand the difference in wine, and they don't even know there's a difference in grain. This is where we need to go. We need to be able to create this type of culture locally and put Northwest grains on the map. So let's talk about it. It's all about that base malt. So when I was a little redneck working at Pike Place Brewery in 1989, we had this malt called peach malt. This is before there were small maltings in America, at least that I knew of. And Charles Finkel imported malt from a tiny little malt house in England, and it was delicious. And it made a type of beer that we really couldn't have made without that. And of course, it went out of business. The next container load of malt we got was a great malt. It's from a company called Crisp. It's also floor malted, and it's a malt made with a grain called Maris Otter. We thought we were doing the best we could do. We got that grain in, we made beer out of it. It wasn't half the beer that we had made before. in 1989, I realized malt matters. Base malt matters. So I'm going to talk a lot about how we can echo the fact that products made from different varieties in different locations and with different years can actually make some of the best products we can sell. That was the way the malt was traditionally malted, is in floor maltings. It's quaint, but it's not efficient. This is the way malt is malted now. This is Great Western Malting, where a whole lot of our malt comes from. And I will say one of the most exciting things is that Great Western Malting is getting pressure from us, small producers, to start making malt out of more interesting things other than just base malt. We're going to talk about a couple of things. I got one more analogy to make. So as a brewer for many years, I was really interested in making beers that featured malt, but it was becoming difficult. I was having a hard time getting malt that tasted different. I could just get pale base malt. But in 1971 at Oregon State University, some research was going on in hops. And they created a hop called the Cascade hop. Up until then, hops were considered just a way to get bitterness in beer. And matter of fact, one of the big marketing campaigns that the big breweries are doing is doesn't have that bitter aftertaste. Think about that now. You know, with the IPAs that we drink. I mean, who in the world would want a beer without a bitter aftertaste? Well, I do too. Thank you for raising your hand. I want beers that feature malt. But in 1982, basically, malt took a huge backseat. And it's great. It put Washington on the map. We got to do something because of Burt Grant opening up Grant's brewery in Yakima, and because of his involvement with the Cascade hop, he actually brought that flavor of highly hopped beers to Washington and then to America, and everything changed. Hip hop's happened, right? We went from being very slow users of old German and English style low flavor, low alpha, high flavor, low alpha acid hops to these really high bittering hops. It basically gave us the opportunity to differentiate on flavor. It gave us the opportunity to differentiate on price. And that's the biggest difference, is that customers now ask for beers by variety of hop. They know they want a hop that has citra, a beer that has the citra hops in them. And they're willing to pay almost anything. You can buy a 6-pack of beer today for $25, which is kind of crazy. But that's where we need to be. We need our products to be able to be that exciting, and we're going to do that by what we're starting with today, learning and growing. This is an interesting thing, and I put this in to show in juxtaposition to how hops have driven price up in craft beers. Beer itself has been going down and down and down in pricing. The blue line is the most interesting one to look at. The red line is showing you that from 1962 to 2016, the cost of a pint of beer has been steadily rising from 65 cents to almost $4. And that's using every type of beer in mind, not just craft beer, right? We don't get $4 pints of beer for the type of beer we drink. But what is interesting is that the inflation-adjusted price has been going down and down. And the reason is because beer is a commodity for most types of beer, not the types we drink, but for most of the big brands of beer, that has become a commodity. And you're not looking for flavor, and you're not looking for excitement in that beer, and that price is getting harder and harder to justify. So people are paying less of their dollars. Well, that's not true in craft. Craft, even last year, I guess this is 2019 now, so this is a year and a month old. In 2017, craft was the only industry that grew in beer. We made it up to 5%. That's huge, but is nothing compared to what they used to be doing, 20%, even 30%. So it's only because there's 7,000 breweries in America now, more than we've ever had, pre-prohibition or post-prohibition. This is the biggest time for beer. And beers are differentiating on hops. Well, malt moved to the background because malt flavor yielded to malt yield. And what I mean by that is, Amba, bless their souls, this is what you say when you're from the South, when you want to talk bad about somebody, but you don't really want to say that. You say, bless their soul. Amba, bless their souls. What they did was they standardized. They brought a bunch of big breweries together, and they said, what do you want out of malt? And when I say big breweries, I mean the Anheisers and the Miller Coors. At that time, there were two separate breweries. And they helped figure out what was needed to grow for those types of breweries. And that's what they suggested be planted. That's what the research got the money on, and that's ultimately what the malt houses got. And it was good. It was good for malting. It was good for growing. It was easy to make, but it did not differentiate. So it was a commodity. There were very few small malt houses available to do anything anyway, and all of these malts were combined to hit targets. That means that you never had the chance to identify a single variety of malt. So malt moved to the background. The farmers and the brewers were no longer talking together. The malt house would talk to the farmers and contract at the lowest price, or even just buy on the commodity market, and then that would become what the brewers got in silos and in trucks. These are some of the criteria. I don't want you to read this eye chart. I want you to look at that little thing that the arrow points to at the bottom. This is the AMBA's ideal malting criteria. And if you notice where it comes from based on 2018 dues-weighted survey of regular members. Now, I'm a member of AMBA. I'm not a regular member. I'm a $500 member, not a $5,000 member, right? And I don't pay enough dues to get a period on that screen, much less any influence on that. So AMBA is still being driven by the big breweries, and that's okay. We don't need to be considering these types of malts for flavor. They're not made for flavor, and if you look at that spec sheet, the one thing that's conspicuously missing is flavor. Everything else is on there. All the sorts of things that would add to yield are on there, and if the only goal is to get the maximum amount of alcohol per ton of grain, then that's probably where you want to go. But that's not how we're going to win. Here's Washington. I wanted to show you where we are in 2008 production. It's kind of hard to see, but third line from the bottom shows that we're actually a player in this game for producing malting barley, but we're not a big player. But notice at the very bottom in the right, there's three numbers. From 2016, we're almost at 200 million tons. Those are in bushels, those are in thousands, those numbers are. And now we're about 25% below that. So what we're discovering is that we're actually planting and growing less barley than we have been. Now some of that was because of yields, but a lot of that was because of the declining industry. The beer industry, for the big guys, is losing a lot of market capability. I see this as giving us an opportunity. What is growing, you remember this slide? Let's see, if I was going backwards, I would go this way. Remember this slide here? This is the one that shows that flavor matters. This is the slide that shows that the big guys are losing because they don't have the flavor. And this is where I think we have the opportunity. So the next slide, you may have recognized a little flash there of Gandhi. If we're going to make this different, we need to be the change we want to see in this world. We're already doing it. The fact that we're here means we're already making a change. So let's talk about how we're going to make changes. First of all, we have to have players who are willing to take some risks, and we got a bunch of us in this room who are doing amazing things. I'm going to shout out my own distillery, and then I'm going to shout out about a whole bunch of other people who are doing some great things. So let's just talk about now, this is not the what, this is the so what. This is what we're able to do when we take a foot into the door of making unique products. Tonight, you'll have a chance to taste the first release of a whiskey we made 3 years ago. It was made from Skagit Valley malting, from a malt grown on the Knudsen farm called Amba. Now, it's not a great malt. It would never have passed all of the requirements that Amba had, but Alba, I may have said that wrong, Alba is the malt, Amba is the organization that makes malt taste like nothing. This is exciting. When we made this malt in the brew house, it performed well. In the distillery, it performed excellent. And what we were wondering is, will it actually taste different after it's been in a barrel for 3 years? A brand new charred American oak barrel, is it going to taste like anything other than just another whiskey made from another malt? Westland's doing the same experiment. We're going to talk about them in a minute too. What you'll discover is, hell yeah, it really tastes different. And what's so exciting about it is you can't make that flavor without using that malt. The only way to differentiate is with that base malt. These aren't caramel malts and specialty malts and all those things that are roasted and toasted that makes beers really brown and delicious. These are just the base malts, and yet their flavors are coming through because of where they were grown, what they are, and in fact, the farm and the rainfall and the temperatures that year. By the way, it's not the best malt for the malt house. Adam will tell you that it doesn't do well in dormancy. Not a lot of it comes alive in that, but some of it does. So here's a little bit of one more fact that we're working on. So just under 75% of the malt we used last year was grown in Washington State. Of that malt grown in Washington State, more than half of it were these boutique malts, these specialty malts that we're focused on single farm, single variety, single vintage. We produced 95 barrels of whiskey. And each barrel, by the way, if you don't know, each barrel will make about 250 bottles of whiskey. So that's a lot of whiskey. That's just under 25,000 bottles of whiskey. So I hope you guys are ready to start drinking, because we've made it for you. So this is whiskey that tastes different than any other whiskey in the world. And the reason is because it was made from malt that was made right here in Washington with local farmers and local maltsters. And we got to keep that going. And here, I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the ways in which we're going to make that happen. Let's talk about some other folks. So almost all of Westland's production team is at this table over here. I don't know who's running the stills today. I guess it's Saturday, so they get to take that off. So they are, in fact, the largest producer of single malt whiskey in America, which is a wonderful place to be. Is 3 miles upstream, up a road from these guys. Learning everything they're doing right. So last year, Tyler told me that they produced 14 different barley varieties. So whiskey from 14 different varieties. 86% of their malt last year was grown in Washington, and they're planning to do another 15 unique barley varieties this year. This is an investment in our community. This is an investment. And this is what it takes. It takes us to network together and then buy into the idea. And when enough of us are there, we can shout from the mountaintops that we have something unique, and the customers will come along. And we're going to talk about how we price it. And that's something else I want you to hear. They're working with, of course, the same local maltsters that we all are trying to work with, Skagit Valley Malt, Link Malting, who is here, Mainstem Malting, who is here. And what we've got, the way we've met these people is at this conference. So this is the most important place to start. Here's some of the other things. I just had to put this up. I want you to just read through a little bit of this. These are some of the criteria that Westland is using to make a difference in this community. Thinking about the economic vitality of the farmers and the maltsters and the distillers, and actually trying to make money for all of us while creating products that are unique to this region. Like I said, it's really great to be in the same town with the giants who are doing some of the best whiskey production out there. We also have in the room somebody from Fremont. I think Sarah is still here. And what's amazing about Fremont is they're also committed wholly to the idea of making an independent grain, farmer-made grain in from the Northwest to produce those taste of places. I'm going to show you a few other slides of great products being made. Remember, this is the so what? How can we make flavors that differentiate? And then we're going to talk about the now what, because that's where you guys come in. Karen Spring Mills and Niles at the Bread Lab are driving this in the baking industry and in food service in a way that nobody else has in this region for 100 years. And we're literally getting flavors and opportunities to use new malts made in local farms that haven't been around forever. One of the things this takes, and Skagit Valley malting. I got a whole slides about malting. I got to talk about these for a minute. So Skagit Valley, I was just with Adam in a conference seminar just a few minutes ago. They've got 26 different varietals they've already malted since they opened in 2010, and now he tells me they're up to over 220 customers. That's great. That's from nothing of 220 customers. I think those are bakers, brewers, distillers, a few other people like home brewers, I'm sure, but most of these are commercial. They're growing like crazy, adding 4 new machines, a bunch of silos. They've got more test plots coming online. What that means is that we're literally seeing the future flavors being developed right now, and the capacity is being built out for those flavors to happen. Link Malt. I've really enjoyed working with them and getting some really interesting malts that I've worked with individual farmers like Bill Myers and coming up with flavors that nobody else can have, and having a great relationship with Link, being able to take these malts and create great malts with them. So they're also land stewards and trying to build the economy here. Mainstem Malt doing the same thing. They're also growing. This is the year where they're really planting a lot of acreage, going from, let's see, what was it, 150 acres to 500 acres in 2019. And I don't know if we're the only ones. I don't know if Westland has done this yet, but there is salmon safe certification on malts now. So what's really great is breweries, bakeries, and distillers are able to actually be protecting the watershed as well as the grain shed by buying salmon safe certified malts. If you haven't, if you've got a few extra $1,000 in your pocket today, Mainstem would love to have you help them build this new facility that they've got in Walla Walla, so that they can, 10 times their size, if not bigger. This is a real opportunity to invest in the local community. And of course, we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the WSU Food Systems Lab. This is what is bringing this whole thing. Yes, right, a big shout out in the back. This is what's putting it all together, and this is why so many people are beginning to get excited about this. It takes us at first 300, maybe 400 people to meet and have a vision, and then we can work and network this until this is a common phrase. We talk about Northwest Terroir in the way we would about a wine. And we owe a whole bunch to Patrick Hayes, who, by the way, in 2017 published the articles, 2 different articles, that malt flavors have terroir, that it does matter what malt you use. So it's not just organoleptic, because that means it's not just a bunch of people drinking and saying, yeah, I think this tastes different. It is literally the science behind it. And Pat Hayes, for some reason, has decided to be the thought leader in that terroir of malt. I could go on. There's a whole bunch of people that we need to say thank you to for taking the risks, putting their first foot out into here and growing. There's only so many slides you can put on, only so many logos you can put on a slide, but I just wanted you to know a lot of people are doing this already. So this is starting. 7 years ago, this slide would have had almost nothing on it. And here we are now, just 7 years later. So how are we going to do a roadmap to making our early successes huge and putting the Northwest on the grain terroir map? And the way is, in 5 minutes, the way is we're going to be part of what's already happening. You're already solving that problem by being in this room. We're going to have to imagine and explore new ideas. So take risks, and part of that is networking, forming relationships, talking to farmers, talking to growers, but also maltsters, also bakers and researchers, and if you get the opportunity, to legislators. I don't know if any of them are in the room today, but it is common to have somebody in the room here where you can actually help influence the way the legislation's going. We're never going to do this if we don't practice good storytelling, so a lot of what we are doing is telling the story of how local grains matter in flavor. I've been using the word malt, but you could be using the word wheat or triticale or any quinoa, anything that you know is grown local that tastes different. That's what we have to share. We shy away from the idea of charging what it's worth, but we shouldn't. So the whiskey that we're selling today, after taxes, let me back up. The whiskey that we normally sell is $58.89. After tax, it's $75, right? We have a lot of tax in Washington on spirits, if you didn't already know. The whiskey that we're selling that's made from a single farm, single variety, single vintage malt, that's $95 after tax. It's $20 more, but it doesn't take $20 more of malt. Matter of fact, the malt is almost a small percentage, maybe $5 more. But the reason we can charge $15 extra is because we're putting that money back into the economy. We're making contracts with grain growers. We're working with malt houses, and we're actually using that money to fund the growth. This is happening in breweries and distilleries. It's literally the way we're going to grow. And charging more is not a problem. Consumers want this product. They're excited to learn that they can taste something that's locally made. And if you market it well, they get to learn that it actually is going to be different. It's not going to be the same every year. Every vintage is going to be different, just like wine. We need to be able to figure out ways to produce and distribute cooperatively. I know there's already been workshops on that, but that is, of course, the way we're going to solve the problems of equipment for farmers, silos and networks, and even marketing is by co-oping. And when I said invest locally, that's actually how we're going to grow these capacities, these farms, these malt houses, distilleries. You know, we're doing a public offering here soon. Okay, so look at this. This is the cycle that we're in. Research, pilot, scale, right? So bring it up out of the fields from a 10 by 10 patch to something that you can grow enough of to make a product. Then market it, get what it's worth, adapt and learn how to make the next thing, and then go back to research. It's a virtuous cycle. We're just going to keep growing. So here's a couple of objections. It costs too much. That's because you haven't actually gotten out of the commodity mindset. Charge more. And that sounds easy, and it's not. But the easy way to think about it is if you get a vintage of a wine and you know that vintage is declared as a great wine, then you're going to pay more for it. You're going to expect to pay more for it. And we have to be able to produce those types of products that people are excited about. It doesn't taste different, then get the right grain. Back to this research, figure out which ones do taste different. This is the exciting thing. Working with WSU and OSU, we're on the wagon, the train to learn about malts that grow well here, grains that grow well here, and make flavors that only are available here. Our customers won't know to ask for it. Of course not. They don't know that these products are coming out. But when you have them and they taste them, then they're going to ask for it. And then you have something already in the pipeline for the next one. Like I said, it's not easy to get these things, to get these malts. That's where I think co-ops will really help if you're small, but also we are all small right now, so this is the easiest way to work is to network. And then finally, everybody thinks that consistency is paramount, and the reason I say it's not is because quality is. We don't really care if something tastes really consistent. I'm gonna knock on Anheuser-Busch because it's just my favorite group to hit on, right? If a Anheuser-Busch beer tastes the same year after year, who cares? It still tastes like an Anheuser-Busch beer. If what you're really looking for is a delicious beer, you'd be much more served, to walk down the street to your local pub, and it may not taste the same the next week, but it probably is always going to taste better. So quality is what we got to focus on. Consistency seems like the thing that we should be focusing on, and I'm going to tell you, in our industry, that's not right. For the niche we're playing in, when we start serving 40 countries, and we're on every grocery store shelf, then maybe consistency is more important. But we got a long way to go to that. You're already doing it. Networking, collaborating, committing to this, so actually putting both feet in, putting your money where your mouth is, taking big risks. We've got the research happening, get part of that, find out who those people are and learn what they're doing and see how you can be part of it. Messaging, so that is basically what I'm doing right now, is telling the story. The more you can tell the story, the better it gets. Explore new flavors, explore new opportunities, new markets. How can you get this message out? Learn from each other, learn from your mistakes, grow, both in terms of planting things, but also in terms of getting better and making improvements, and then repeat. Rinse, wash, repeat. Well, thank you so much, guys. I look forward to seeing you out tonight for a bunch of drinks. We're going to have some whiskey in the back. We're going to have some beer in the back that are made from malts that are specifically from the grain shed here. And this will be the first time you'll be able to taste them. First time anybody will be able to taste them. So I don't expect to see you walking a straight line when you leave tonight. Thank you very much.